Hi everyone, my name is Khalid Sasa and you're listening to Pali Threads. Today I want to talk about Mother's Day. Specifically, I want to commemorate all that the Palestinian mothers have done for the Palestinian cause, especially as we approach 78 years of the ongoing Nakba catastrophe. So for starters, I want to read a statement that was said by Israel's Minister of Justice. She was Minister of Justice from 2015 to 2019, Ayelet Shaked, about Palestinian mothers. Here we go. Behind every terrorist stand dozens of men and women, without whom he could not engage in terrorism. Actors in the war are those who incite in mosques, who write murderous curricula for schools, who give shelter, provide vehicles, and all those who honor and give moral support. They are all enemy combatants, and their blood shall be on all their heads. This also includes the mothers of the martyrs, who send them to hell with flowers and kisses. They should follow their sons. Nothing would be more just. They should go as should the physical homes in which they raise the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. Israel's former Minister of Justice, Ayelet Shaked, from 2015 to 2019, calls Palestinian mothers producers of snakes and that they need to be killed along with the snakes, the little snakes that they produce, and they should be destroyed along with the homes that they live in. This is what Palestinian mothers live under when we say they live under brutal Zionist occupation. Zionism is an ideology that is racist and that completely dehumanizes Palestinians. The so-called Minister of Justice, it's a laughable term. Of all the ministers, they're all, racist. But she's the Minister of Justice, absolutely dehumanizes Palestinian mothers. They're basically vessels that just produce these venomous, poisonous snakes. Israel, for 78 years since its inception, has primarily targeted Palestinian women. We can see this clearly in Gaza. From October 2023, a report released in November 2024 by the United Nations says 70% of those killed in Gaza in that year are Palestinian women and children. In the West Bank, we have seen Palestinian women humiliated at checkpoints, not allowed to go to the hospital to give birth, dying at checkpoints, their babies dying at checkpoints. In Gaza, we've seen Israeli soldiers posing in the lingerie they found in the homes that they took over after they forcibly displaced the indigenous population, the local residents. We have seen rape and sexual violence used by the Zionist entity against Palestinian women. Why would Israel target women? Why specifically target mothers? What do they have to gain with this? Zionists, when I've spoken to them, they would totally reject that Israel has been committing genocide. They would cite that the population of Palestine, of Palestinians, has been increasing since 1948. That if Israel had been committing a genocide, then their population of Palestinians wouldn't increase. I wrote a blog about this topic for Mother's Day that you could read on my website, palithreads.com. And there I highlight certain statistics and I mention how in the early 1800s, Palestine had a population of 350,000, and that increased to 725,000 in 1914, and then to 1.34 million in 1946. Today, we have over 6 million Palestinians that live in historic Palestine, whether that includes the occupied West Bank, the historic Palestinian 1948 territories, or in the Gaza Strip. So the Palestinian population today is roughly the same as the Jewish Israeli population. And then we have another 7.4 million Palestinians in the diaspora. So Israel has faced this challenge from its inception. How do we get rid of these Palestinians and take over their land? Israel doesn't want to give rights to the non-Jewish Palestinian residents. You see, Israel wants to establish a Jewish supremacist state. And, you know, you cannot give citizenship to all these Palestinians because then ultimately the majority of your population is not Jewish. How can you be a Jewish state if most people living on the land are not Jewish? In 1948, Israel displaced over 80% of the indigenous population, more than 800,000 Palestinians. They displaced Palestinians over and over again, whether in 1967 or in other years. Just as they're doing now in Gaza, over 70% of people living there are refugees or the descendants of refugees, people who were expelled from historic Palestine and took refuge in Gaza. And so I raise all of this because I go back to why is Israel targeting Palestinian women and mothers? Well, Israel has been desperate to erase the population of Palestinians. And also to go back to the point of genocide, what is genocide? Genocide comes to the intent when you have systematic attempt to erase a population, which is exactly what Israel has been doing for 78 years. It is clear systematic efforts to erase the indigenous Palestinian population through many different means, but they keep failing. The fact that the Palestinian population has been increasing over the past 78 years doesn't mean that genocide has not been occurring, that Israel isn't complicit of genocide over these years. But it just means that Israel has failed in its goal of erasing and eliminating the Palestinian population. And it will always fail. But it is still committing genocide and has been committing genocide way before October 7 of 2023. So, to go back to the point of Palestinian women, historically, Palestinians have had a much higher birth rate than Jewish Israelis. And this has led the Israeli state to desperately try and support the Jewish Israeli population to produce more and more children, to, in a way, compete with Palestinians. But simply, and until now, the Palestinian birth rate has been higher than the Israeli birth rate. Palestinians want to have kids. They love having children. They love life. They are indigenous to that land and they can sustain themselves off that land. There is a very strong community bonds and big families. And this has been a way of life for many generations. But also having kids is a way of resistance and preventing the erasure of Palestinians. Israel purposely targets Palestinian women and mothers as a core strategy to eliminate Palestinians from existence, to eliminate the ability of having more children, or in the words of the Israeli official, to eliminate the possibility of Palestinians producing and raising more little snakes that will pop up as a thorn to the Zionist entity. Oh my gosh. Oh shit. Damn, this is good. I want to talk about Canadian hypocrisy. We've seen the Canadian government make strong claims opposing the Iranian regime because they say they stand with women's rights. We saw, for example, Canadian Foreign Minister make strong statements, for example, saying woman life freedom in support of women's rights movements in Iran. But then Melanie Joly stands with Israel, which is the biggest oppressor of women in the entire world. What does that say about the Canadian government's stance and care for women? It says that Melanie Joly, Chrystia Freeland do not care about women when they pretend to. They use it when they feel like they can target a government because they don't like their policies. But when it comes to a fellow settler colony, white supremacist state, the Canadian government will not care about women's rights, especially when it's non-white women whose lives are in danger. And don't think that the Canadian government cares about Iranian women when Melanie Joly says woman life freedom. She only says woman life freedom because the Iranian government's policies do not align with the Canadian settler colonies' policies. And so she has to find a way to speak against and vilify this regime. Ultimately, on Mother's Day, we celebrate Palestinian mothers for their love, care, joy that they have for life, and steadfastness against injustice. It is Palestinian mothers who were willing to stand up to the guns of Israeli soldiers who come to the house looking for their kids, or looking for their husbands, or looking for them. It is Palestinian mothers who, while having their kids, they will go and resist against the settler regime. My late mom, born in a small village called Madama, recounted stories of her having thrown stones at Israeli tanks growing up in the occupied Palestinian West Bank. She told us about the hilltop in her village that she used to climb with her friends. They would walk up and get fruits off of trees like figs and enjoy the sunset. Today, you can't do that because Israel colonized this hill and it's now home to one of the most violent and extreme settlers of all the extreme settlers. It's called Yitzhar. And frequently, settlers from this colony will descend onto my mom's village, Madama, and attack the residents. They will destroy shops and burn the olive trees. First of all, what indigenous population focuses its efforts on burning olive trees of the land that they're indigenous to? Today, Palestinians can no longer climb the hilltop of their own village, like my mom used to do in the past. And in fact, what I was told by my fellow relatives when I was last there in our village is that if you even try to go near the hilltop, you get shot immediately. There is watchtowers, there is surveillance, there is blue sirens that you constantly see at night, reminding you that you are being watched by the Israeli military. Not to mention that the Israeli military frequently enters the village itself and raids into homes, mostly as intimidation tactics. My mom was born the youngest in a large family to a father who was the leader of the village and is until now very well respected, and to an incredible, fierce Palestinian mother. Unfortunately, both of her parents died when she was very young, so she was orphaned at the age of 12, and then she was sent to the Emirates to live with her elder brother, and she faced a lot of challenges, but one thing that remained consistent was her love for her homeland, and it stayed deeply rooted inside her, that love for Palestine. In university, my mom was part of the volleyball team, but she also did theater for Palestine. Unfortunately, the Secret Service raided my mom's dorm at her university. My late mom would always tell us that she strongly believes that her talking about Palestine blacklisted her from ever landing a good job. She studied accounting, so from ever getting a good job, especially, for instance, in the government, where a lot of her friends got jobs, but she didn't, despite her having top grades. Despite my mom's experiences and her struggling to get opportunities and having a successful career because of her advocacy, I just love about her that they couldn't intimidate her and silence her, and that after she had my siblings and I, she instilled in us that same deep love for our homeland and passion for justice. When we immigrated to Turtle Island, from the beginning, we would go to protests for Palestine, we would go to cultural events, and when we were young and we'd go to school, my mom insisted we always proudly assert our Palestinian identity when asked where we're from. We know a lot of Palestinians and parents who tell their children, don't say you're Palestinian, it's going to get you in trouble. Your teacher can bring down your grades. It can cost you opportunities, which is true. And we see firsthand how saying you're Palestinian in any environment can negatively harm you. But despite this, my mom insisted we assert our Palestinian identity. We would not say that we're Syrian, Jordanian, or Lebanese. And whether in stores, my mom would always go, and if she sees someone buying some sabra hummus, she would tell them, no, I tried, it's not good. I recommend you buy this other one. And the other person would be like, oh, okay, thank you. Very strategic about it. My mom had a profound love for justice and a love for life. It was really simple things. She loved teacups. She would often ask me to take pictures of her with different teacups. She loved beautiful food. She cooked so well. Colors and furniture. I'm wearing red today. I decided to wear like the colors of Palestine, green pants and black tee, this red cardigan, and I'm gonna wear white shoes when I head out. But my mom loved, her favorite color was like bright red, but she loved flowers. She loved the rain. For her, she saw the rain as washing away and cleaning everything, and the smell of it and the flowers, and it like was a way of bringing life. And I say this because while my mom was very fierce for justice, it's a reminder of how she and Palestinians love life. My mom loved children. She loved colors. Despite all the challenges, being displaced and orphaned at a young age, she was such a gentle, kind, generous, and humble person, incredibly intelligent. I'm so grateful that I was given the opportunity to be raised by this mother for 17 years of my life. Allah yarhamha, she passed away when I was in high school. But how lucky am I to have had that person as my mother? And how lucky was my dad to have had her as his wife, my siblings as their mother, and anyone who's had her, honestly, is incredibly lucky. And this also just goes, for me, I want to expand and talk about Palestinian mothers in general. My cousin, her son last year in the occupied Palestinian West Bank, her teenage child was killed. He came home from work, was entering his home, and an Israeli settler shot him in the back twice. He was on life support and then he died. And so, of course, the Israeli military did not punish the Israeli settler that did this. They probably rewarded him. And it speaks to the criminal behavior, the dehumanization by the Zionist entity of Palestinians. But also, I mention this because I want to talk about how when I called to give my cousin to offer my condolences, she was surrounded by loving community from our village, and she was very strong and resilient in her response to me. I was expecting someone very sad and quiet on the phone. She was sad and angry, but sounded strong, firm, and hopeful, telling me justice comes from Allah, and this is the life that we are living right now. This is the situation, but he was martyred. He's in a better place, and we are on the side of justice. That's just astonishing that this is a mother who obviously her heart was burning for her child that was killed in the most brutal of ways. But he also died honorably, and inshallah, he will be in the highest levels of Jannah. And she continues to exist with her family on the land that they try to erase us from, and they continue to fail. And so I just think the Palestinian mother is incredible. The strength, resilience, and love they give, not just for their kids, but for the land, the cause, the struggle for liberation. Ultimately, I am who I am today because of my mom. She's the biggest influence in my life. I wanted to share a bit about her because the Palestinian woman is a nightmare to the Zionist occupation. She is a source of strength and resilience to Palestinians fighting their occupier for 78 years. From my mother, I learned to stand firm for justice, to be sensitive to human rights causes. Long live the Palestinian mother. Long live Palestine. Happy Mother's Day. Please celebrate your mothers. May Allah protect and bless you and your mothers. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Khalid Sasa, and you were just listening to the Pali Threads podcast. I'm trying to upload a new episode every Sunday, and you could read my blogs online on my website, palithreads.com. And my podcast videos are available on YouTube and Spotify. Thank you. Have a great day and happy Mother's Day.